It's time for another Dice Tower review with Randy White and Mark Streed.
Hello folks, welcome to Board Game Corner. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy. Recently, Mark and I attended the 2014 Denver Comic-Con. We are pleased to see that board gaming had been added as a new focus of the event. There were a number of games to play in the gaming room, as well as quite a few dealers selling games in the vendors area. One of the games we found, which is quite a gem, is Assault 19XX by Paul Roman Martinez. Assault 19XX was a successful Kickstarter in 2013. It is a battle between good and evil in the pre-World War II era that supports 2 to 6 players and plays in a little bit under an hour. Paul Roman Martinez is a multi-talented man because not only did he create the game, but he also created the graphic novels for which he wrote and did the artwork for, on which the game is based. Now, before we get into the review, let's look at a brief review of the convention, and then we'll come back to the game itself.
Board Game Corner was recently invited to attend the Denver Comic-Con, where they held their first gaming event. This included both video and board gaming. We talked to several designers and publishers like Justin Schaefer from Terra Nova Games. They had their newest title on hand, promoting Ophir. Ophir is currently on Kickstarter, give them a look. Also, we had a chance to catch up with Soda Pop Miniatures about their upcoming release of Super Dungeon Explorer Forgotten King. Several retailers were on hand selling games and promoting games in general. Plus, the conclave of gamers were some of the folks helping any and all who wanted to throw down on some gaming during the convention. We learned to play several games. It was good to see so many folks turning out for gaming and spending time at the tables, young and old alike. Special thanks to Jason Jansky from the Denver Comic-Con for including us in their first go at gaming. We look forward to seeing this event grow in the future. We also found a fairly new game. It was a successful Kickstarter game in 2013, Assault 19XX from Paul Roman Martinez, which will be the focus of our review this week. Thanks again, Denver Comic-Con. See you again next year. The goal of 19XX is to defeat the opposing team by knocking out all of their players in the same turn or by getting lucky enough to score 13 victory points on the scorecard. You equip items and weapons to make your faction the strongest. Everyone gets a random character card based on the faction they're playing for. This card shows a description of the character, a setup of their starting cards, abilities, and their once per game ability. Down here we have the health tracker, and here we have luck, defense, and attack. At the start of the game, everyone is dealt 4 item cards and 1 luck card. In the case of the Shining Skull, he starts with a machine gun, so he gets 1 less item card. On your turn, there are several things you can do. You activate any special abilities or powers. You activate items you've already equipped by turning them, which indicates this. You draw another item card, and then you attack a player, an opponent on the table, any opponent. You add whatever points you have earned to your scorecard, and then you have to always discard down to 5 cards. And then the dice passes to the next player. So let's take a look at an attack. You take your luck value, plus your attack value, plus your items like a machine gun, which is 3, plus your trench knife plus 1. That brings us to a total of 8 for your initial attack. You also roll a die. So in this case, we'd have a 10 for our attack. Now, it's entirely possible that you will roll a 1, which is the clover. This is considered a critical failure. If that happens, not all is lost, because you still get to choose or draw a luck card. There are also cards in your hand that will modify your attack. There's one called Frenzy, for instance. This one will allow you to do more than 1 attack per turn. And also a grenade, which does automatic damage. Now, neither of these cards count as your attack. These are just modifiers or add-ons, so to say. Now let's take a look at defense. You start with your default defense value, which is 7 for our friend the Shining Skull. You add in his luck, that gives us 9. And then we have some cards that modify that as well. Improved armor plating, and this happens to be a global to your team defense value, which is really nice. So you take that value together, and that's your base defense. No dice is rolled like it is for attacking. However, you do have opportunity in cards like the helmet, which allows you to roll a 5 or a 6, and the attack is deflected, basically deflected off your helmet. Also, just like attack, you have cards that modify and defend you, so you can cause your opponent to just miss you completely. All right, let's talk about scoring. So there are 2 sides to the score tracker. This one is for the story mode. On this side, you just play with items and luck cards. We prefer the story, which is just generally more fun. There are good things and bad things that happen along this score track, though. So here you have a +1 once you hit 3, a +1 to team defense. Now, the way these scores work is when you do a successful attack, then you get a victory point, which correlates to the attack. Now, sometimes you have multiple attacks, and you'll get multiple victory points. It just depends on the scenario and the character and the cards you're playing. But when you flip over these chapter cards, as the score track dictates, they're not all beneficial cards. So some are global to the entire team, to your entire team. Some are global to the entire game, and some are cards that you'll hold in your hand. But all of them have varying abilities. They help tell the story, and it's just a good time. And again, of course, once you hit 13, that's the end of the game. Now let's take a quick look at some of the other characters. I won't go through all their details here, but this just gives you a quick glimpse at some of their artwork and some of their different abilities. But you have quite a few to choose from. And here's a look at more of the item cards. Again, we won't go into detail on all of them, but here's just a glimpse at some of the other options there are throughout the game. And there's too many to cover here, but this will give you a look at some of them. And here's a look at some of the luck cards. Again, there's lots of options. Some nice artwork. Should keep you busy for a while learning and discovering all the items and luck items. One of the biggest aspects of this game that I really enjoyed was the whole theme. I'm a big theme guy, so
Yeah.
The story sucked me in. And granted, I played the game initially without the story, without knowing the story, and it was still fun. But after reading the novels, it really brought everything together, because the items and all the cards, they were like, oh, this is from that part of in the story, and so forth. So it just made the game that much more enjoyable for me, and I really enjoyed the artwork as well. The gameplay was really fun, the interaction and teaming up and going after everybody and attacking, and it's a bit of has maybe a little bit of a Munchkin feel to it.
Yeah, the equipping of the characters. Yeah,
exactly. So, and I like Munchkin. So this is just a neat way to kind of redress it, so to say. It is different. Don't get me wrong, but there's just a lot of neat aspects about it that put me in mind of Munchkin.
Okay. I also thought of Magic the Gathering to some extent.
Yes, very much so.
You have the equivalent of enchantments that you would put on your characters to equip them over time, as well as the equivalent of instants or sorceries or whatever. So the people who have played Munchkin or played Magic the Gathering will probably pick the game up quite a bit quicker. It's not a hard game to pick up, even if you aren't familiar with those games. But I think if you have, you'll be able to jump in a little bit more quickly.
Yeah. The other aspect I like was all the components and the artwork.
Right. Yep.
So the big player cards are great. The score trackers, they're hard metal pieces. They're really nice. So all those components just really give a polish to the game that you wouldn't expect maybe from a first-time game developer.
Yeah, and Paul, I really want to commend you on that.
Yeah.
I was stunned when I found it. We went to his booth, and his booth was made up not only of racks of the game and the books, but also all the posters he did in the same genre or the same theme. And Paul, you did a great job with that. The artwork I have not read the graphic novels yet. Those are Mark's, but I'm sure he'll try to get me to read them later.
Indeed.
So I'm coming at it from an outsider's perspective in the sense that I've just played the game without reading the background. But even then, I was impressed with the artwork. It does give this pre-World War II feel to it. A little bit of for those who've seen Hellboy, some of the characters might seem that same era.
Very much so. It has that same feel.
Yeah,
really
there's a little bit of magic, a little bit of occult, but also the military aspect. So altogether, it does give a very polished feel. And as Mark said, the components just put you in that mindset. The only complaint I would have had as far as the components would be the score tracker or the health tracker. It's a little bit small. It's easy to get off of the spectrum of colors which represent your health. But otherwise, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's pretty minor.
It is minor. Otherwise, it just had a very good look and feel to it. Now, another thing that we haven't mentioned is the mechanics.
Right.
It is fairly quick to play. You don't have a zillion choices on your turn. In general, you've got a deck of cards or a hand of cards, which might have, I don't know, how many do we have at most? Maybe
4 to 5.
I think you've got a limit of 5.
You have a limit of 5, but sometimes we get down to 1 or 2.
That's true. And so the fewer cards you have, the fewer choices.
Yep.
One of the games I played had 6 people in it, so 3 on each team. And you have your choice of obviously who you're attacking. You're trying to find the person with the weakest defense. So even though there are a number of choices which keep the game interesting, you don't have so many that it induces analysis paralysis. When it's not your turn, there's not a lot to do if you don't have the equivalent of an instant where you could maybe defend or buff one of your teammates.
Correct.
So there's not a lot to do on when it's not your turn, but the turns go quickly. So you don't get bored waiting for someone to finish theirs.
And with the exception of the first time you learn it, some of the people are just getting the hang of it. But once everybody has it, which is pretty quick, the game flows pretty well.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, the only thing I really didn't like about the game was the rule book and some of the vagueness on some of the cards. Mm-hmm. However, I sent a huge list of questions to Paul. He responded right away, clarified everything, and again, it was his first game, so I think he's done a remarkable job. But if I had to find something, it was just in the rules, some of them, and maybe it was just I wasn't understanding quite right, but I think some of them were just a little vague for me.
And is that something we can publish on Board Game Geek, maybe under our review?
Yeah.
The list of things?
Yes.
Yeah, so
definitely.
we'll do that.
Yep.
And so that you have the same answers that we got from Paul directly, and he won't be inundated with the same questions.
That's right. What about you?
As far as the theme itself, I have not read the graphic novels, as I mentioned before, so the theme was not as immersive. The theme was not quite as immersive for me. I still like the look and feel. I still like the overall era in which it is based, but the theme was not as deep for me. That's not a dislike by any means. It's just not something I will give as high of a score to. The other thing I didn't like as much was some of the cards, some of the weapons seemed to be a little bit overpowered. Now, one of the games I played, as I mentioned, we had 6 people, and we crushed our opponents, including Mark, courtesy of about 3 potato bombs. Potato bombs you can throw out and do 1 damage.
Almost repeat right after one after the other.
We just... It can be luck. It can be a certain degree of luck.
Definitely comes down to it. There's a lot of luck in the game as well.
And that's, for those of you who don't like luck, it certainly comes into play, because even if you have a great weapon and a great attack value, the opponent can certainly have a helmet and get lucky rolling 5s and 6s and deflect all your attacks. So for people who dislike luck in the game, this is definitely not all luck, but and there's still enough strategy and fun to it that it's worth playing. But luck does factor in, and in our case, we found that potato bombs got past all their defenses.
Yes, they do.
And the additional benefit is whenever you do 1 point of damage, you move the marker down the track and you draw another card. As Mark mentioned earlier, the cards aren't always good cards, so that can backfire, but it does move you toward that 13 value and getting victory a little bit sooner. So that's not a huge complaint overall. I felt like things were fairly balanced, and there was enough variety in the weapons that you said, oh, yay, I actually got a cool one here. And you worked to put it out there and start using it more quickly.
Now for our verdict. So, as some of you may know by now, I'm a huge theme guy, and this game has it in spades, which totally sucked me in. I really enjoyed the interaction with everybody that played, the back and forth, the attacks. It was great. So I'm giving it 3.5 corners out of 4.
And that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I know.
Now, I enjoyed playing it as well. I'm not, in general, a big fan of the military era or the war era, but I did enjoy this. There was enough kind of feeling like you were part of the war between good and evil behind the scenes that I still enjoyed it as well, even though I didn't have a lot of the background material. So I will give it, in the spirit of World War II, I will give it a solid 1-1-1 for a total of 3. Now, Once I read the graphic novels, I might increase my score, but in the meantime, that's my score.
I will work on that. So until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.